So let me transition that spiral into something a bit more linear that perhaps will resonate just as well. We started out at the beginning with the GALEMMF. Where is Rob? Is he here? Is he still here? Just want to give attribution to that and to Dick for the OMB FIAF. Systems, standards, configurations. We got inventories of LANs, WANs, voice video, data centers, application software licenses, all those things that you would do to build a technology architecture. And from that, we learned and we applied. And the next area of building was service architectures. And same thing, customer services, process automation services, business management services, enterprise service catalog. These are all really still in the context of compliance. If you look at it from a federal perspective for OMB, trying to build those things that were required. Remember the getting to green? Everybody lived through that dream? That was a challenging time. One note about here, about a service catalog. We have a customer that we developed an enterprise service catalog for the first time in the annals of recorded time. This customer had a service catalog that was viewable and available for everybody in the business. Across all lines of business, each other could see what their services were. And for the first time, architecture started to take place. We could see that I have these services that you might need, or more importantly, I have these services that I want to expose in the catalog so everybody else knows you're aware of them. Don't go out and build something we already have. Which led next into business architecture. And this is where enterprise architecture started emerging beyond information technology. The investment alignment, business case justification, acquisition strategies, mission focus reviews, looking on those as enterprise architecture reviews, make sure that your business services are aligned with your strategic goals. And then we started getting into higher orders of inventories of competencies, of facilities, of assets, of infrastructure. And finally, we get to where we are today, the borrowed line from DoD, architecting for a purpose, back to what you said, where we are trying to figure out how to use, or using enterprise architecture to do strategic planning so that we don't get rid of national priorities or strategic capabilities that would affect our ability to achieve national priorities. So we're looking at things like horizontal integration. Very quickly, if you have your lines of business that are vertically integrated, that was a joke, that's stovepipe. We call it vertical integration with consultants. Looking at how we integrate horizontally across those lines of business. Looking at the dependencies, the relationships, the interconnectedness of things. Priority phasing. If we have all these capabilities, we can't use them all at one time. If we have a particular mission, how do we use these capabilities and in what sequence so we can deliver that mission, knowing that other missions might want to use those same capabilities. And methodology, which I don't want to talk about today, for capability portfolio management, a way to manage those capabilities so that a budget analyst doesn't come in and say, you don't need 7 of them, you only need 1 of them. There were many years, point down here in the bottom corner, that it took for us to understand, to be able to work in this world of enterprise architecture. And then over the last 7 years, you can see a systematic path from technology architecture up into strategic planning using enterprise architecture. I would be remiss to say that none of this happened without firefighting all along the way. Every day we're doing our jobs, we're fighting some kind of fire. But when we put this presentation together and we look back at what we were able to accomplish over the years, you start to see something that actually looked like a plan. Now, when we were down here, we really didn't plan to be up here, but we ended up here because we did some really good things along the way, and we kept learning and applying as we went. So here's the secret to our success. Now I gotta ask, could you just keep this among us? We make money at this. Okay, we got decades of applied experience, we continuing education, industry, environment. We read everything about our customers, from strategic intent, configuration, technology, components, we really do. But here's one that might escape most people. Data calls. Does anyone here hate data calls? Yeah. You're being shy. We have a different paradigm. We love data calls. We endorse data calls. We support data calls, and here's why. We generally don't have to do them, but we ask the sponsors of data calls, could we have the results of your data call? And they look at us with incredulity and say, well, nobody's ever asked that before. Of course you can. Here you go. Here's the next iteration. Here's the next iteration. So we have inventories of data calls about components, inventories of systems, inventories of services. We understand the mission and the business requirements because all that information has been collected. And it's something that we as a company do, and we take it very personally. We read what's involved in these data calls, and we start to do the logical connections between components and systems and services so that we can start to then put these arrows in between here, start to see the relationship between components and systems and between systems and services, and how their programs are aligned and how they use inventory, individual services and systems and components, to the point where you can start drawing line of sight to make informed executive decisions about a particular mission and the services that mission is using, and the systems that are enabling those services, and the components that are enabling the systems to enable the services to achieve program requirements. I know this is all rookie enterprise architecture line of sight stuff, but it's to make a point. Our success really has been understanding what our customers know, so much so that when the proverbial emergency comes along, we're the folks that get looked to because we have all the information. So information actually is power. So learning through our, air quote, iterations. A superbly designed, well-planned, methodically documented architecture and the related artifacts, in many cases with our customers, were met with mere indifference. Does that mean that architecture still is important? It absolutely is important. But it's not a product, and it's not a framework, it's not a model. It's a management discipline for business. And I already talked about how we view architecture. I want to get back to the point of relevance that Ron mentioned. Timing can mean everything for an enterprise architecture. Here's almost an oxymoron. An inconsistency. Senior executives are often reactive. They don't have time to plan. It's kind of funny, that's what they're hired to do. They're supposed to plan, and yet they're so busy doing their jobs in firefighting that they don't have time to plan. And then something significantly happens, like Congress will redirect a multi-billion-dollar program, and suddenly executives have to go into emergency planning mode. Like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I need information. I need to know what we have. I need to know where we're going. I need to know our capabilities. Wasn't there some enterprise architect in my office just a few days ago talking about all this modeling they had done, talking about these reports, all these interconnected? Go find that person. And that actually happened to us very recently with a major program. We put together a business architecture, complete with drawings and interconnectedness and dependencies and relationships, and it was a lot of work, and it was well-spent taxpayer money, I might add, and it was met with indifference until 3 days later when a major program, a multi-billion-dollar program, was redirected. And suddenly that information that was in that business architecture became real and valuable and got us the proverbial seat at the table. Suddenly we were the people that had the most information because remember, we had studied. We know the pieces and the parts and the components that makes things up. We know what the services are. We know what the strategic capabilities are. We know what the goals and directives are. We know the people in the organization. We know the organization. We know how the organization works. I'm a little passionate about this, but it really is important.